Tune into ESG Matters with Risk Insights, where we explore ESG with impact.
Hi everyone, and it's great to be back with ESG Matters with Risk Insights. I'm your host Anushka Bogdanov. This has been an incredibly testing time for my family with my health, and I wanted to use this episode to thank my husband, the CEO of Risk Insights, Anushka Bogdanov, and my daughter Shari Ramlal, who produces these incredible episodes, my team at Risk Insights, and Kunal Kalyan, the head of ESG ratings, as well as all our valuable stakeholders for their resilience and support in my trying times. I believe this too shall pass. I have been part of an amazing journey of uniting Africa on sustainability and the long-term outcomes, but over the past few weeks, I've been asked a very crucial question. Where do I see ESG heading amidst all of this global chaos? So I'm going to share some of my views on the subject. I believe ESG is splintering. It's not dying. The world is no longer moving towards a universal ESG standard. Instead, different regions are building their own versions. Europe is doubling down. CSRD, CSDDD, CBAM, SFRD, where ESG is becoming law, not just reporting. United States is politicizing ESG, especially with Trump's second term shifting federal attitudes. But at state and corporate levels, ESG is still advancing, just rebranded as resilience, climate risk, or sustainability finance. India, China, and Africa are framing ESG less around values and more around economic competitiveness, industrial policy, and access to green finance. It's very strategic and not ideological. So in short, ESG isn't going away. It's being fragmented and reinterpreted depending on power blocks. Secondly, from a risk specialist perspective, I believe that ESG will become risk-based and harder-edged. So forget the fluffy, marketing-driven ESG. Going forward, investors and regulators will be focusing on climate finance risk, which takes into account physical and transition risk, supply chain disruptions, for example, carbon tariffs and forced labor sanctions, corporate liability with greenwashing lawsuits and fiduciary duty on climate disclosure, taking into account the board responsibility extremely seriously. So ESG must tie to material risk or financial value, otherwise it will be sidelined. Thirdly, I believe that the capital markets will still demand ESG, but will call it something else. Banks, insurers, and asset managers still have to manage climate, social, and governance risk because Basel III and IV requires it, IFRS S1 and S2 are now effective, and EU CBAM is forcing exporters to price in carbon. Even if governments weaken ESG rules, markets will price risk and opportunities quietly but firmly. It might be labeled transition finance, resilience, responsible business, but the substance remains. I also believe that there is a new ESG emerging: geopolitical, resilient, pragmatic. Companies and countries are realizing ESG isn't just about being good. It's about surviving and competing. Energy security equals climate security. Workforce welfare equals national security. Governance equals resilience against corruption, cyber attacks, and political instability. So expect a tougher, less emotional ESG 2.0 that will be focused on sovereignty, resilience, and capital efficiency, not just about doing good. Africa and emerging markets are a sleeping giant in ESG. If the West over-politicizes or weakens ESG, Africa, Asia, and Latin America could become the true guardians of sustainable growth. The huge infrastructure needs equals green investment opportunities. Carbon credit markets are maturing. Natural capital such as our forest and biodiversity can become economically valuable. And then there's this demographic divide. which equals youth-driven green innovation. But to lead, emerging markets must own their ESG frameworks and not import them blindly. So another important risk topic I want to bring in is greenwashing, the past, the present, and the future. So the past, before 2020, it was the Wild West era because we had loose definitions. Sustainable, green, ethical, anyone could say anything without standardized verification. Marketing was greater than substance. Companies heavily marketed ESG or climate commitments like net zero by 2050 without clear roadmaps, budgets, or accountability. There was fund rebranding. Many investment funds simply rebranded existing portfolios as ESG funds without changing holdings materially. There was also a regulatory vacuum. No serious frameworks existed to audit ESG claims, and there were few penalties for exaggerated statements. And the result was that investors were misled, good companies were diluted amongst the pretenders, and ESG skepticism grew. 2024 to 2025 was seen as the era of crackdown and litigation. We are witnessing the tightening of regulations. In the EU, the new SFDR, CSRD, and the Green Claims Directive have strict rules around how companies and funds describe sustainability. In the US, the SEC has started suing companies or funds for false ESG claims, leading to outflow of ESG capital investments. Australia, Canada, and the UK, we have seen the regulators have launched greenwashing investigations and fines. There has been litigation rising. Climate lawsuits against oil and gas companies for misleading the public, class action suits against funds that overpromised ESG performance, and then there has also been a demand for transparency, where investors now want hard metrics, carbon footprints, diversity stats, governance practices, and not just promises. The result is that companies and funds are now nervous. There are many that are withdrawing vague ESG labels. And there has been green hushing. Quietly doing ESG without talking about it is becoming a real trend to avoid litigation. So what is the future of greenwashing for 2026 and beyond? I believe there will be a period of accountability and ESG assurance. Mandatory third-party assurance from partial to full audits, similar to financial audits where companies may need independent audits of ESG claims. Standardization globally, IFRS S1, S2, ISSB standards, green taxonomy, and CBAM will make ESG reporting standardized and comparable. Impact verification, not just reporting inputs such as we planted trees, but outcomes, we restored X hectares or absorbed Y tons of CO2. Investor skepticism is already baked in, so institutional investors will default to assuming ESG claims are exaggerated unless it is backed by hard evidence. There will be new KPIs, real transition plans, carbon reductions per dollar of revenue, percentage of green capex, and quantifiable metrics will rule. The result will be that ESG becomes more rigorous and data-driven. Only credible actors will remain visible. Litigation risk will permanently hang over companies or funds making bold ESG statements without backup. Greenwashing killed early ESG credibility, but the future of ESG will be built on verifiable, auditable, and risk-linked sustainability data. At Risk Insights, we didn't wait for the world to catch up. We built ESG GPS with the future in mind, grounded in Africa's realities and ambitions. Today, as exchanges like the JSE, SEM, BSC, Rwanda, and Uganda stock exchanges deepen their ESG journeys, we stand ready to empower resilient markets, foster real transparency, and unlock Africa's rightful place in sustainable investing. The future belongs to those who prepare for it, and at Risk Insights, we are proud to be part of that future. I look forward to hosting the next episode of ESG Matters with Risk Insights, where I aim to discuss capacity building and the roles of institutions like CACI, PAFA, IRIMSA, and the roles they play in Africa to fast track knowledge and skills transfer. I hope you enjoy this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts down below in the comments. And if you never want to miss another episode of ESG Matters with Risk Insights, hit the subscribe button. I'm Anushka Bogdanov, and ciao for now.